Affordable housing continues to be a massive problem in the United States, particularly in large cities. That had already been a problem, but now we're noticing that prices for homes lower in the market, typically in neighborhoods that are a little more affordable for people, are also experiencing a pretty steep increase in prices, bidding wars, and apparently all cash buyers are behind all of it. But the situation is much worse than you even expect. So I want to start off by just showing you exactly what's happening in the housing market overall. Affordable housing advocates are panicking. This one tweet says, the Case-Shiller tiered home price index below shows why. The lowest priced homes in the country are appreciating the fastest, driven by all cash investor buyers. So you can look at that graph and it shows you exactly what he's referring to there. And there is a very real reason for why this is happening. Home builders are literally selling entire neighborhoods to wealthy investors, which prices middle-class buyers out of the market and also, of course, inflates the price of housing. And understand that when they do this, they don't do it with the intention of then selling the houses in these neighborhoods. They do it with the intention of renting the homes, which of course minimizes inventory of houses for people to buy, and that prices people out of the market. There are other ramifications as well, which I'll get to in just a minute. But this was a pretty decent report from the Wall Street Journal. They gave some examples. For instance, D.R. Horton Inc. Built 124 houses in Conroe, Texas, rented them out, and then put the whole community, Amber Pines and Foster's Ridge, on the block. A who's who of investors and home rental firms flocked to the December sale. The winning $32 million bid came from an online property investing platform, Fundrise LLC, which manages more than $1 billion on behalf of about 150,000 individuals. So D.R. Horton booked twice what it would typically make selling houses to the middle class. And this is really about speculating, yield chasing. Investors are snapping up single family houses to rent or flip. You know, a lot of this activity is reminiscent of what we saw prior to the housing collapse in 2008. But as one real estate consulting firm mentions, you now have permanent capital competing with a young couple trying to buy a house. This is from John Burns, who has a real estate consulting firm. And he estimates that in many of the top markets, roughly 1 in 5 houses are sold to people who will never even move into them. So again, this is speculator activity, investor activity. This isn't about providing homes or selling homes to people who are looking to live in them. And the worst part about all of this is if you've done your due diligence, like you followed all the rules, you're putting the avocado toast away, you're saving up like crazy for that 20% down payment, you're done, you're priced out of the market because your 20% down payment is now competing with all cash buyers, more often than not investors who could be over leveraged, meaning that they took out loans, speculating that investing in this market, investing in the housing market and doing these rentals will pay off. But if, for instance, interest rates increase a little bit, that could lead to a complete collapse of this system. And I'll get into more details on that in just a second. But Ryan, I wanted to give you a chance to jump in.
Right, and I think that the top line point for me is that this is a function of what Thomas Piketty was describing almost a decade ago at this point, this like absolute runaway extreme inequality, what Occupy Wall Street was about. There's just too much loose capital in the hands of private investors who don't feel like they have an easy way to get the return that they're looking for. And part of this is a function of the kind of long-term low interest rate life that we've been living in, coupled with the massive exploitation that has continued to push the wealth of the entire economy up to the very top. So you have very small amount of super rich people controlling most of the resources, unable to get a guaranteed interest rate in return. So they're like, well, what can we do? And they look around like, oh, why don't we just snatch up all of these houses? You started seeing, New York City and London and a few other places become places where, money launderers and other oligarchs would park tens of millions of dollars in these, in these penthouses that they would never move into. Because they realize, oh, real estate is an asset that is going to be pretty sturdy. It might go down a little bit. It's probably going to go up. And so when I need the money, then I can sell the thing and I can get out. And this is taking that to the logical next step. Like, okay, if this $20 million penthouse is worth parking my money, why don't I park it in this $200,000 home, rent it out the entire time? So you're getting paid. You're getting paid for your investment, which is why people like to own their own home, because you're ideally it grows while you're living in it, so that when you're ready to retire, you sell the house and that's your retirement. That's kind of like the American dream that has been sold to people. These investors have said, okay, well, we'll just buy this house, and then this family that was going to rent it, that was going to buy it. Instead, now they're going to have to rent from us, because if we're all doing this, we're going to be driving prices up. So we're breaking even or making a tiny profit every month. Meanwhile, there's a decent chance that the asset price rises over the years, and then we sell it. 30 years from now, when we want our capital, or we sell it, or we package it up and bundle it and turn it into assets. And so it's capital just invading one of the only places that regular people have to amass wealth in this economy.
I mean, if you look at the trends, we are living in this Gilded Age, right? Because what led to the Great Depression was essentially people taking out debt in order to invest in the stock market. People were over leveraged, and that led to the crash. And so what we're seeing here is something very similar with the Federal Reserve printing money. We have low interest loans. Ordinary people have a much more difficult time qualifying for those insanely low interest loans. But you see these investors, these massive investors, able to get, as you mentioned, loose cash and just pump the housing market with this money. And again, they're not selling, they're not flipping these houses, which is bad enough. They're basically taking available housing off of the market and turning them into rentals, which prevents literally the only way at this point most working Americans can build generational wealth. So that's the short term, the short term ramifications of this. The long term is, and it's difficult to tell. I don't know. I mean, there's some people who are definitely convinced that there's a housing bubble and it's gonna burst and it's gonna be disastrous. It's hard to tell because you can't tell how over leveraged these investors really are. But one thing that I do know is as this inequality continues to grow, and as more and more ordinary Americans find it incredibly difficult to just afford rent, these investors are not gonna get the return on their investment that they're hoping for. They're like the drivers of inequality, at least part of what drives inequality in the country. That inequality hurts their bottom line in the long run, right? I don't think they've thought about that. I don't think they're even considering that because maybe they're planning on selling just as things are about to crash. But if these companies are in fact, or these investors are in fact over leveraged, we're looking at another massive collapse somewhere down the line. It's just hard to tell when.
Right, and the long-term political implications are interesting too, because focus groups, polls, and even common sense will tell you that owning a home is one of the things that actually pushes people in a politically conservative direction. They start becoming a lot more concerned about all of the types of things that conservatives are foremost concerned about. From crime to property values to what's property taxes, like get off my lawn. It creates a kind of reactionary mindset, whereas renters feel like they're willing to take more political risks. because they just simply have less. They have less to lose, and so you could see a situation where this took the kind of populist energy that is out there now and supercharged it. Because if you take home ownership rates from where they are, and you knock them down under 20% or less, then the ability to appeal to people's fears around crime and property taxes and other issues diminishes. Not that people are going to be pro-crime, but there is something about owning a home. You're just more bothered if somebody breaks
the biggest
your window than if
they
break your landlord's window, right?
Right.
And so that could have interesting political implications because it creates a different class of political actor in the country.
Oh, that's a fascinating perspective, and I think you're right about that. But there's a real consequence to what the Federal Reserve is doing right now. I don't see a lot of people raising alarm about it. When we discuss inflation, usually it's in response to any type of government spending that would actually help provide financial relief to ordinary people or improve people's lives. But inflation is already negatively impacting the housing market as a result of what the Federal Reserve is doing. And I don't see enough of a discussion on that issue, but we're gonna stay on it. I think it's an important issue to focus on. And for now, it doesn't seem like there's any real policy proposal to combat what we're seeing, but this is something that needs to be dealt with legislatively. There needs to be limits on how many homes any one individual or any one company can purchase. I get that people want to have an investment, but if we're dealing with this insane housing crisis, especially in a place like California, where the homelessness issue is out of control, where we keep hearing our local lawmakers tell us that we just need to redo our zoning laws and build more homes. No, they're building more homes. The problem is the developers are building the homes and then selling it off to investors who have no interest in providing affordable housing or affordable homes for people to buy.
And the Fed could do something about it. They could say as a policy, we're not going to absorb asset-backed securities that are involved in this type of manipulation because we think it's dangerous to the systemic stability of the economy. So we're just not doing it, and boom, that would deflate it overnight. They wouldn't want to do it overnight.
Yeah, and there are a lot of conflicting interests at play here. But at the end of the day, people are not only getting priced out of neighborhoods, priced out of the housing market. We're seeing the impact of this inequality and the system on our streets right now. We have encampments all over California, and it's because of this system that certainly needs to be tackled.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.